It has been what I would describe as a constant sore in the family. We all knew him.
So, you knew Epstein, you knew what he was up to, you have your own secret service, your own spy network, everything, but you're just worried about the damage. And we had the situation where President Trump was over in the UK recently, and they made these huge pictures, posters of him and Jeffrey Epstein, these massive signs, etc. But nobody brought up this photograph or this photograph.
Yeah.
How is it possible that on Her Majesty's Secret Service that the Queen and Prince Charles didn't really know what Jimmy Savile was up to? Was he that smart?
Oh, I think he was. And also what he did, according to reports, is he would blackmail people. He would have a lot of information. He was a very powerful character on that sort of basis. Obviously, that we don't know what Charles knew or what Her Majesty knew. The reason they would have such a close connection is he did raise millions upon millions for charity. That's what they would say. And it was in those circumstances that they met. The royal family obviously meet all sorts of people, all sorts of the time. But MPs are now calling for closer scrutiny as to exactly how much the royal family did know in light of the Prince Andrew scandal. And that's what it is. It's a tsunami of scandal, isn't it? More and more revelations coming out. We have the 367-page book from Virginia Giuffre, which is harrowing when you read it. And we can go through a lot of the examples and the revelations there. But the real question is this. I always say that sunlight is the best disinfectant. And when people try to hide things, that's the time to be concerned. Questions should be asked, and those questions should indeed be answered.
I swallowed the red pill back in 2008 and began reporting the news in front of a camera in 2019. In that time, we've seen a complete upheaval in world politics. The battle lines have changed between the illusion of left versus right to the reality, globalism versus nationalism. Despite all the information, the truth and the lies, there are two very distinct pathways emerging. Should we follow Labor and Liberal to a dystopic one world government, or do we fight for our nationalism, unlock our hidden resources wealth and build a new Australia? With the world teetering on a knife's edge, should we solidify our relationship with the USA and become the 51st state? This is my mission statement here on Australian National Review, and I welcome you to black pill me as hard as you can as we determine our future together. This is the 51st state.
Hello and welcome to the 51st State. This is episode 44 in a series that is asking big questions from around the world. And as I've explained many times on this show, the 51st State comes about because our King, Charles, is a globalist who attends World Economic Forum meetings and seems to put other religions ahead of his own as the head of the Church of England. Don't quite understand it. Meanwhile, here in Australia, we're part of an AUKUS agreement which is meant to build nuclear submarines, which we've now learnt as of yesterday that deal is going to go ahead with President Trump and Anthony Albanese meeting in the White House. But it's meant to protect against our biggest trading partner, China. And Albo, along with his buddy Daniel Andrews, they're great mates with China. So how does Albo compromise himself to be a servant to two masters, China and the US? What's in our best interests? Is it Albo's, or are they in his best interests? And that's why the 51st State was created. Well, today we're going to have our first ever guest from the UK, Andrew Eborn. He's going to join me just after the break. We're going to discuss UK politics and, of course, the Prince Andrew scandal. But in the meantime, as the Jeffrey Epstein story continues, and we're still waiting for real evidence to at least expose what's really going on, to hold people in power to account that may well change the world, which is kind of what we're thinking this is really all about. Is power protecting itself, or is it? Well, today, James Comer in the House Oversight Committee came out with this, confirming that Alex Acosta has got no connection with Donald Trump in terms of the investigation concerning Epstein. I'll play that for you. We'll come back.
Acosta confirmed there was no contact with President Trump during the Florida case. No link, no conversations, nothing. Despite these facts, Democrats, especially Ranking Member Garcia, continue to spread lies about President Trump. And they are lies. They're infected with an incurable case of Trump derangement syndrome. Oversight Committee Democrats post daily about Epstein. In fact, they posted or reposted about Epstein nearly 60 times on X since the shutdown began. You know how many times they posted about essential federal workers not receiving paychecks because they voted against funding the government? Once. They've posted about that once on the Democrat Oversight Committee and over 60 times about Epstein. You see where their priorities are. Let's be clear. Democrats don't care about transparency or accountability in this matter. The evidence we've gathered does not implicate President Trump in any way. Public reporting, survivor testimony, and official documents show that Bill Clinton had far closer ties to Epstein. We're working to bring former President Clinton in for a deposition, but the Democrats aren't helping one bit. You would think, since we've already brought two former Trump cabinet secretaries in, they would be willing to bring in a Democrat who's had publicly a far closer relationship with especially Maxwell and Epstein. So why is that? That's a question every reporter should be asking Ranking Member Garcia and every Democrat on the committee. Why aren't you helping to bring Bill Clinton in for an interview?
It's incredible, isn't it, when you consider what's been pushed in the media to put the spotlight on to President Trump, and yet the spotlight is now being put back to President Clinton, and the Clintons both missed their hearing where they were subpoenaed to go before the House Oversight Committee on their knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein, and now we're in a government shutdown. The plot thickens. Don't go anywhere. This is the 51st state.
Australian National Review is Australia's first real free and independent press. One with no editorial control by the elite, but a publication that can generate critical thinkers and critical debate, and hold those spreading mistruths and deliberate propaganda in mainstream media to account. News with a difference that will be educational, compelling, and create a platform for political and social change in this country, and address the real issues facing this country and the world.
And welcome back to the 51st state. Joining me now, Andrew Eborn is a barrister, broadcaster, futurist, and president of Octopus TV. He's the author of Andrew Eborn's Book of Failure. Andrew appears regularly on various channels around the world, as well as being a keynote speaker and a host at live events and festivals, including Cannes. He presents and chairs for a number of leading organisations, including the Royal Television Society. His website is octopus.tv. Andrew Eborn, welcome to the 51st State.
It's an absolute delight to join you, Jason.
Well, it's good to see you, Andrew, and as one who followed you as a muckraker in the TNT radio days, it's terrific to see you in another part of the world, Octopus TV. How are things going for you in independent media today? How do you relate it to what you've seen over the last 3 or 4, even 5 years, the changes?
Well, what I love is that we live in such a diseased information age where we're drowning in a sea of misinformation and disinformation, and never has it been a more important time to question everything. And that's what I love about independent media, is we can do exactly that. We can hold everybody's feet to the fire. As you probably know, I present a series called Andrew Eborn's Fake or Fact, where we look at misinformation and disinformation and unpack the real from the fake, and basically try to urge everybody from a very early age to question everything. We used to get our news from just one source, is what people tend to do. They tend to surround themselves with people who have the same views, and we're in that sort of vacuum, if you like, and so people don't listen to other views, and a lot of the world's problems are caused as a result of not understanding. I always say that the future depends on jaw, not war. You need to walk a mile in somebody else's moccasins. Understanding is the key to peace, and that's what we need to achieve.
Well said. Well, here in Australia, just at the weekend, we had another one of the rallies, this one protesting against immigration. And just purely from a reflection point, the famous song True Blue by John Williamson is often sung at these particular rallies as a bit of a way to bring people together. Everyone knows the words, it sounds Australian, everyone can sing along, and you don't have to be particularly good, and it just gets people going. Well, John Williamson got upset because the song was sung and demanded people to cease and desist from what they'd already sung yesterday. And he said he believes in an Australia that believes in multiculturalism, and therefore oversimplifies the whole idea by dismissing all of these people as these horrific racists. It just doesn't make sense again. And what it does do is it exposes the fact that John Williamson is underinformed or misinformed, therefore, because this is not what the people are arguing about at all. Wouldn't you want to think that if people in Australia are singing a song, that would be a good thing if it's called True Blue?
Well, we have exactly the same thing here with our flags. And you turn around and anybody who raises questions or concerns about immigration is labelled far right. That seems to be the easiest thing just to sort of throw at people, or racist, which seems to sort of another bandying those sort of words around. But it's not racist to have concerns about issues that affect society. And a question is this, is that a flag cannot be racist. The question is the waving of the flag and the circumstances in which it is waved may be interpreted in that particular way. So you need to look at all these circumstances. But what I always say is that we long for the power of love to surpass the love of power, and that's how you get peace. But looking at singing a song, you've got to look at intention. And we have very, very strict rules over here. We all talk about free speech, and we have a lot of famous cases which have dominated the world headlines about people being arrested for the tweets and even for WhatsApp messages. So we have the police, the thought police. They used to say that I think, therefore I am Descartes, but it's now I think, therefore I am arrested. And there seems to be lots and lots of cases on that sort of basis. We had a great example of the Father Ted writer, a brilliant comedian, Graham Linehan, who talked about very strong views on transgender. And he said, look, if you find a trans person in the ladies' dressing room, just kick them in the balls. Well, he meant that as a joke, because they're not supposed to have balls, and people didn't realise that. So you've got to turn around on that sort of basis. There needs to be more than just lip service paid to free speech. There needs to be an understanding that it's only through dialogue, jaw, not war, that we get those resolutions, as I say.
Now, you mentioned intention. Being a barrister, that this is what the law is based on, whether you meant to do something or not, therefore whether you'd be punished for it. We also saw in the UK from the COVID era and ongoing, police arriving at people's homes and arresting them, saying that they had posted something that offended or may offend Is there a crime where you have an intention to offend, or accidentally, like manslaughter, you don't intend to kill someone but you killed someone, so we have a lower charge of offence?
Well, the biggest thing at the moment, and again, it's polluting the media over here, are these non-crime hate incidents where people might say something, it may not amount to a crime, but somebody might get offended. These are sort of hurty words, if you like. And that's got to be wrong. The police should be policing our streets, not our tweets. And I go back to people saying, well, let's have a look at that. What does that mean? Because you talk about incitement, and the phrase at the moment is incitement to hatred. It's not incitement to violence, it's incitement to hatred. So you turn around and say, well, there's two things there. If I say something, what is my intention in saying it? I used the Graham Linehan example, kick them in the balls. It was meant as a joke. He didn't mean you should go around and violently attack somebody. We had a similar thing with Lucy Connolly, you might remember, at the time about the asylum hotels, and she was sort of saying about burning them down for all I care. She didn't mean to burn them down or incite hatred. She had her own tragic situation, but she was put in jail for 30 months and suffered terrible consequences as a result. She, a young mother, had lots of tragedy in her own life, so the punishment didn't fit the crime. What I've been advocating for is a bit more clarity. So certainly there is freedom of speech, but it's not absolute, because you need to turn around and say, well, there might be consequences. So defamation, for example, you can't go around just saying whatever you like and would defame a person without consequences for it. Similarly, if something does directly, and that's the important point, if it directly leads to a violent attack, if you're there and somebody's got a knife and you say stab them, well, that's one particular incident. If you're talking generally about an issue and you've got to put that into context, that's what we need. But there are two things there, Jason. One is the intention of the person making the words, and the second is the intention of the person hearing them, because that's the action, and there needs to be a causal link between the two. So it needs clarifying, and I'd absolutely advocate that people should look at that around the world.
You just brought up something that makes a lot of sense in terms of being able to politicise speech, because if it's looking at the person receiving the words and they can construe it in a way almost to entrap someone, it's like that you can have the language police. And if you have a politicised judiciary, you can create real problems for people.
Oh, it's a massive problem, and that's why I say we need clarity. People are petrified here. Journalists, I know, coming to visit me here in the UK to come on the Andrew Eborn show on more platforms than Paddington. Subscribe now. They come along here, but they're scared, because they're scared that if they come in, they basically might take their phone and they might be able to access all of that, and if they don't provide that information, they could be arrested. And so people are really, really concerned about that sort of side. What we needed is an environment where we not only pay lip service to freedom of speech, but we actually honour it. And as I say, it goes back to the basic rules. What is about intention? Of course, society needs rules to make sure we don't go killing each other or hurting each other or whatever. But we need to be able to question those in power. I always say that trust comes in on foot and leaves on horseback, and trust in the media, trust in the police, trust in the general services that we have at the moment is at an all-time low. And the way that you rebuild that trust is through communication. It's allowing that forum where you can question everything and holding people's feet to the fire.
Well, here we are, and it's not just in the UK, it's in Australia, it's in the United States, it's all around the world, this lack of justice, a two-tier system. And of course, what we're seeing in the United States, and we're going to get into it in a moment because it affects you in the UK with Prince Andrew, Giuffre, Epstein, the name's Donald Trump. I'm going to play you a clip in a moment from Bill Clinton that's just mind-blowing, the way that he's addressing something. You can see that this man is in fear. I'll play that in a second. But where do we go in a situation when people in authority live in a different legal system to the rest of us and are never held to account and know that they're never held to account?
Yeah, well, that's completely wrong. And we often talk about a two-tier justice system over here, and the fact that our Prime Minister, well, at least for today, is called Keir Starmer. It's always about two-tier Keir, and they look at that sort of side. Justice is supposed to be blind. That's what we have the famous image of Lady Justice. She wears the blindfold on that sort of basis. So it doesn't matter what colour, creed, race, religion, or whatever. She has to basically ensure that all of it is exercised in the appropriate way. So the more that we have this discrepancy, the more that you're going to get distrust in the media. And one of the reasons that, and I was advocating this for a long time, is start televising a lot of our court cases over here, which we've had in America. You have wall-to-wall television of these big cases. You remember O.J. Simpson, you remember Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. People would queue up with their popcorn every day to sit down and watch all of that. We didn't have any of that in the UK. It always used to just be these court reporters who do their little sketches of the person, and then you'll get the report as a result of it. The courts have been far more open now to basically saying, let's say, make sure justice is not just done, but seen to be done. So we now have a lot of the judgments are being televised. And what that shows is that there's a process where people complain about the leniency of sentences. Well, they try to turn around and say, look, there's a sentencing council which sets out the parameters upon which people are supposed to be sentenced, so that one person in the dock would be given exactly the same sentence as another person in the dock if they committed exactly the same crime in exactly the same circumstances. So they have these tariffs. And the way that the Sentencing Council works is that if you have a particular tariff, you're right in the middle, that's the penalty you get. And if there are mitigating circumstances, it's lower than that. And if there's aggravating circumstances, it's above it. And the judges go at great lengths to explain why they're doing that. And the principle, which I totally endorse, is basically to reinstate that trust in the judiciary.
So when you have aggravating circumstances, if somebody knows that they are above the law, and we're getting onto the Prince Andrew subject here, wouldn't that almost be an aggravating circumstance? And we'll see it when we watch him in these clips. But the idea that if you are royalty and you think it's okay to abuse those that people that don't really count, therefore, that to me is an aggravating circumstance, because you're telling the world that we're all the same, but clearly you're practicing something completely different.
Yeah, I mean, you make a very interesting point. The aggravating circumstances are very clearly defined depending on what particular crime it is. So that's what you need to look at. So, for example, if you're using a firearm or you're using a weapon in a particular situation, that is how it's aggravated. If you're below a certain age, there's mitigating circumstances. So it's very clearly defined depending on the crime. But you're right, people in position of power, if they abuse that position, that needs to be looked at as well.
Yeah, because abuse of power, it's one thing to gain a position of power, but then to abuse it, which is always in self-interest, is just something that most of us can't accept. And I wonder if it's that exact point that is the reason that this great awakening that we seem to be going through is just taking so long. Because you speak to people and they'll say, oh, look, well, you know, they'll make an excuse, even though they don't know this particular person. Like, I'll give you an example. I'll bring it up now for you. It's just something simple. We're talking about Prince Andrew. And we had the situation where President Trump was over in the UK recently, and they made these huge pictures, posters of him and Jeffrey Epstein, these massive signs, etc. But nobody brought up this photograph or this photograph.
Yeah.
How is it possible that on Her Majesty's Secret Service that the Queen and Prince Charles didn't really know what Jimmy Savile was up to? Was he that smart?
Oh, I think he was. And also what he did, according to reports, is he would blackmail people. He would have a lot of information. He was a very powerful character on that sort of basis. Obviously, that we don't know what Charles knew or what Her Majesty knew. The reason they would have such a close connection is he did raise millions upon millions for charity. That's what they would say. And it was in those circumstances that they met. The royal family obviously meet all sorts of people all sorts of the time. But MPs are now calling for closer scrutiny as to exactly how much the royal family did know in light of the Prince Andrew scandal. And that's what it is. It's a tsunami of scandal, isn't it? More and more revelations coming out. We have the 367-page book from Virginia Giuffre, which is harrowing when you read it. And we can go through a lot of the examples and the revelations there. But the real question is this. I always say that sunlight is the best disinfectant. And when people try to hide things, that's the time to be concerned. Questions should be asked, and those questions should indeed be answered.
Well said. Well, I'm going to play you just a 10-second excerpt from the original Andrew interview with Emily Maitlis when she was on BBC, just to give you an idea of what they were thinking and whether or not this was damage control. 10 seconds, take a look.
It has been what I would describe as a constant sore in the family. We all knew him.
So, You knew Epstein. You knew what he was up to. You have your own secret service, your own spy network, everything, but you're just worried about the damage. That's kind of what he said to me there. Did you hear that the same way?
Well, I did, and I mean, it's a fabulous interview. Clips are played all around the world now. I think Andrew, when he thought, yes, I nailed it, is what he said. Well, far from that. It was a car crash of an interview. And what happened, a number of things. He used phrases, very sort of, he tried to use euphemistic phrases like the behavior was unbecoming, is one of the phrases he used. And Emily Maitland said, unbecoming? Oh, no, I'm just trying to be polite, is what he was saying. So the question is, what did he know about Jeffrey Epstein? Well, more and more facts are coming out. Clearly, he knew him much longer than he indicated. There's a picture of them in Central Park after his conviction was known. He said he was going along there to say goodbye. What then sort of happened is there's a Fergie as well, his wife, ex-wife now, sort of turned around and say, well, she cut off all connection with him, and she wrote and she tried to distance herself from him when the revelations came out. It subsequently emerged, she wrote to him saying what a great friend he was. And apparently the circumstances for that, Jason, and I've looked into this, is that she felt that she was under threat, that he was going to sue her for millions if she didn't say something positive about him. And what happened, Fergie herself had borrowed significant sums of money, apparently. So one suggested about £15,000, others have suggested it's far more than that. And she basically, in her times of need, that's what she did. She went to Jeffrey as a result to help pay off some of her debt. So that was the indebtedness that she had.
Now, there's been not just one book from Virginia Giuffre written by Amy Wallace, but there's other books that are coming out calling this the greatest scandal, the fall of the Duke. The Duke and Duchess of York here. And it's also been alleged that now that comparisons made to the Clintons, like a crime family between Andrew and Sarah, given that the allegation that you mentioned of the £15,000 being more like millions, that was brought up as well. And also questions about his role as trade envoy for the UK, because this is indicating now how this sort of graft system, if you will, may in fact work. So inquiry coming. Now, we're going to get to that because this is where, and as a barrister, we're going to dig deep to see where maybe this could play out. Let's start with this clip from Amy Wallace speaking today to Emily Maitlis. I think this is important, and it'll give us where we're at today, and then we'll go back and have a look at what Andrew said, and you just start to see where we're all being deceived here by those in authority. Take a look.
And then I want to take you to her trip to London. This is the first time that she'll meet Prince Andrew in the Belgravia house that belonged to Ghislaine Maxwell. And he asks her age, or he's made to guess her age. He talks about his own daughters.
It's a game that Ghislaine liked to play, where she would say, guess how old she is. And she says that to Prince Andrew, who is a dear friend of hers. And he guesses correctly that she's 17. And he then adds, I have daughters around your age. I think he says a little younger than you, explaining why he can actually read correctly her age. So it's an important moment, because I think if we could line up all the men that Virginia was trafficked to and make them answer questions, a lot of them would say, well, I didn't know what age she was. In this case, we know he knew, because he guessed and he was right. And he even makes the connection to his own daughters, which shows something pretty twisted about, I guess my daughters are royals, so they shouldn't be raped, but you can be raped by me? Like, I don't know exactly what the mental jujitsu is there, where he's still about to go take her upstairs and have sex with her. But as she writes in the book, it was as if it was his birthright, that there was a sense of entitlement. He was fairly polite about the sexual encounter. And I say that within the context of there were people she was trafficked to who were incredibly brutal to her. But he was not a brutal person. He was just taking what he wanted at the time. Her feelings be damned.
Guess the age. pretends, though, that he doesn't know who she is, knows that she's 17, and then goes on with it. I just can't understand how any adult would do that in this situation unless you feel that there are different rules that apply to you.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, it's important to point so you don't get shut down as a thing that Andrew's always denied this. And in the original Emily interview, he denied even meeting her, although he did pay her 12 million quid. Why would you give 12 million quid to somebody you've never met? Maybe to make it all go away. But in the book, there are horrendous examples of the abuse. Virginia basically says that she explained how she first met Maxwell. It was when she was basically a towel girl at Mar-a-Lago. She was in her early teens, I imagine, well, maybe mid-teens, as a towel girl. And then Epstein, she was invited back by Ghislaine to Epstein's place to basically say, would you like a job as a masseuse? And when she went in, there was Epstein lying naked on this particular bed, if you like, and basically she was abused from that situation. The revelation also occurred about when Maxwell first introduced Virginia to Prince Andrew. She said it was a special day, I think in March 2001. And she said, well, today's a lucky day because you're going to be Cinderella and you're going to meet a handsome prince. Right, yeah. So what happened is that's the first time that she was introduced to Prince Andrew. That's the suggestion. And they say that they had sex at least 3 times. On one of those occasions, it was in an orgy, which involved 8 other girls, young girls, again, they were saying, but they say they couldn't speak English. And apparently Epstein said at the time that that was good because they're easier to control and much easier to deal with. But as a result of it, they didn't use condoms. Is another shocking revelation. And they talk about things like sadomasochistic sexual practices as well. And she was being tortured, and she was just praying that she would black out rather than have to continue suffering this abuse. One of the interesting revelations, Jason, which isn't normally spoken about, is a medical procedure, because she said that she remembers it, it's slightly hazy, but undergoing a procedure where she thought when she was bleeding a lot, she found herself in this medical place, and she later found a scar, and people were suggesting, well, apparently Epstein said, well, you'd had a miscarriage. Other people said it's an ectopic pregnancy. But I've had somebody on my show talking about Juliet's experience, another victim. And what she was saying, an angle which hasn't been explored fully yet, is that Epstein was obsessed with about human reproduction. He was obsessed with all sorts of things and how he might be able to control longevity and so on and so forth. So one of the suggestions was that they were actually harvesting eggs. And I think looking into the medical procedures that may or may not have gone on is certainly something we should shine a spotlight on.
It just gets darker and darker. Andrew, when this started back in, for most of us, in that period, the first Trump presidency around 2016, this is when people were sort of doing all sorts of crazy research. It's when we discovered websites like 4chan, for example, that created these forums. And on there, I bring it up all the time, there was a particular character who called him or herself FBI Anon. And this is where this Anon thing came out before, after Anonymous, but before all the other ones sort of started. And this particular individual explained that they were a mid-level analyst, and they started getting into deeper and deeper. People were questioning about whether you just take out, Hillary Clinton. They said, no, that's not going to work because there are many, many others that will just replace. But it was when the topic of human trafficking came up for the first time, that's when it sort of became a thing on social media, because no one ever spoke about it. No one understood it. They understood that there was, underage prostitution, for example, but putting that into human trafficking as such, which implies in a larger industrial size scale, was the first time that we've heard of it. And then, of course, there was the revelations of Pizzagate, which came from WikiLeaks. It's never been sued for anything, of course, except Julian Assange does many years inside a prison, etc., for separate scenarios. But that was never really debunked, although it was conveniently put to the side. But this was when we got a taste of the depravity of people in power, because it was coming up in these leaked emails and the way that they were speaking in certain types of code. But now that you're speaking about this in 2025 in a book written about Virginia Giuffre, it's her story written with Amy Wallace here, and these are real revelations. this is what this is what we've been protected from, so to speak, for so long. But now it's coming out, and we're only scratching the surface. But when you bring up the idea of potentially harvesting eggs, how much worse can it possibly get in a human trafficking sex industry so far? And you've already mentioned sadomasochism. What else is to come? Snuff films?
That's the thing, isn't it? We don't know. And the trouble is, in a vacuum, people speculate. And this is always the problem. I always advise people, look, control the narrative, if you like. If you've got nothing to hide, don't worry. You should cooperate. And Prince Andrew previously said he would cooperate, but to date has just not been available. So it's extraordinary.
It's unbelievable. Let's play now this clip. We're going back it's historical now, 2019. Andrew once again, this time on BBC, Emily Maitlis, when she was employed there. Have a look at this. This is just a small excerpt from that interview.
Do you know you didn't meet her, or do you just not remember meeting her?
No, I have. I don't know if I've met her.
She provided a photo of the two of you together.
Yes.
Your arm was around her waist.
Yes.
You've seen the photo?
I've seen the photograph.
How do you explain that?
I can't. Because I have absolutely no memory of that photograph ever being taken.
Do you recognise yourself in the photo?
Yeah, it's pretty difficult not to recognise yourself.
But it's possible that it was you with your arm around
that's
her
me,
waist.
but whether that's my hand or whether that's the position, I have simply no recollection of a photograph ever being taken. I don't remember that photograph ever being taken. I don't remember going upstairs in the house, because that photograph is taken upstairs. It's not a picture of. I don't believe it's a picture of me in London, because when I go out in London, I wear a suit and a tie. I don't believe that photograph was taken in the way that has been suggested. But the photograph is taken upstairs, and I don't think I ever went upstairs.
You're sure of that?
Yeah, because the dining room and everything was on the ground floor.
She said she had sex with you 3 times. Once in a London house when she was trafficked to you in Maxwell's house.
Yes.
Once in New York a month or so later at Epstein's mansion, and once on his private island in a group of 7 or 8 other girls.
No.
No to all of it?
All of it. Absolutely no to all of it. Mm-hmm.
Are you saying you don't believe her? She's lying?
That's a very difficult thing to answer. When the allegations came out originally, I went, well, that's a bit strange. I don't remember this.
You could not spend time around him and not know.
Look.
Would you be willing to testify or give a statement under oath if you were asked?
But if push came to shove and the legal advice was to do so, then I would be duty-bound to do so. If there are questions that Ghislaine has to answer, that's her problem. I'm afraid I'm not in a position to be able to comment one way or the other.
When was your last contact with her?
It was earlier this year, funny enough, in the summer, in the summer.
About what?
She was here doing some rally.
So even though he had by then been arrested and was facing charges of sex trafficking?
No. This was early spring, I think. It was long, because when was he arrested?
July.
No, it was before July.
If you were in court and you heard this, would you believe Andrew?
Well, it's very interesting, because you turn around, and I do get it. He has lots of photos with lots of people. You do that sort of stuff. He could have gone down the fake photo route in this day and age of AI, with the Pope and a puffer and so many things which are misleading people. He didn't quite do that, but a lot of it didn't stack up. You remember another part of that interview when he talks about pizza. The reason he remembered that day so well in March, I think it was because he was at a birthday party at Pizza Express in Woking, who now named a pizza the Thick and Crusty after Prince Andrew. Remember the old joke? And he said that he remembers it so well because Sarah Ferguson was out, and they would never leave the children alone. Basically, one of them would always be there with the children. That's what he said. I calculated it would take less than an hour to get from the Pizza Express in Woking to Tramp's nightclub. And the other extraordinary revelation was that he doesn't sweat. You know, you sort of turn around on that sort of thing because Virginia Giuffre was saying he's on the dance floor sweating. Well, his defense of that was he didn't sweat. I think the general public consensus is nobody believed him, or very few, if any, believed him. And I think he sort of delusional. It was a very bad, it was a PR disaster. And what's happening now, Jason, is you're getting more and more revelations. And this other thing which has come out is about this desperate digital dirty tricks, where he was trying to do this smear campaign, where he asked one of his protection officers to dig up the dirt on Virginia. He gave her date of birth, he gave her social security number, and apparently they engaged internet trolls to try to rubbish her. Before these sexual allegations came out in full in the public. So he knew it was going to happen. The real hope was that this would go away with the payment of this sort of hush money, if you like, of the £12 million to settle the case. Clearly it hasn't got away, and more of these revelations are coming out.
It just beggars belief, really. It does. When you think that we're at this stage in the game, we are this many years along. Epstein, the culprit, is dead, deemed suicide. His accomplice is in jail for 20 years. The prime victim is dead by suicide. There are multiple books, witnesses, people coming out and speaking, and we're meant to believe that the police still are not sure if they need or want to investigate. And we have a king who tells us, or we find out, that the Duke has voluntarily given up his Duke status. Who cares? How is this damage control, though? And what's to come?
Well, there's a couple of things on that. Apparently, the latest is that the Met Police are actively looking, as opposed to sort of passively looking. They're actively looking at the claims that the former Duke asked his bodyguard and Queen's press officer to dig up the dirt on her. So let's keep looking at that and make sure we keep that story in the headlines. As regards to giving up the titles, that was a pathetic attempt on the 17th, wasn't it, of October, sort of saying, well, we've discussed it and thought it's a big distraction and so on and so forth, so I'm not going to use them. So technically, he's still got them, because you need these are sort of formalities in Parliament and so on and so forth to get rid of those titles. And there also needs letters of patent if you're going to get rid of the prince bit of it. And there's been suggestions that William, who's trying to distance himself as much as possible, may be doing that, not just for him, but also for Sarah Ferguson and also for the two princesses and also for Harry and Meghan. So any non-working royals, what he might do by letters patent is to get rid of the prince titles. Certainly there's a pub very close to where I am, which was called still is called the Duke of York. They used to proudly display a picture of Prince Andrew as a ho-ho-ho. They've taken that down. I've got a more historical picture up there now. But certainly the whole optics on this, it stinks, doesn't it? And you've got to work on that sort of basis. Action needs to be taken, and action needs to be taken now.
What I can't understand is how the palace thinks that this is enough and how they don't want to get ahead of the curve. Every single time these things happen, as we've talked about at the beginning of this interview, is that it takes away the trust in authority. How much we talk about political capital, I don't know if that's the right word in terms of the royal, how much royal capital can you possibly have? Or do they believe that it's unlimited and they'll just damage control their way back to whatever they are? But if William is telling his own father, the king, you sort this out before I take over, or I'm going to get rid of him completely, we're at a crossroads here, because that would indicate that William believes that the House of Windsor, his throne, is in jeopardy.
Yeah, and I think you need to look at that sort of stuff. And it's interesting, the words resonating. It's worth repeating what those words are from Virginia Giuffre in her book. What she wants to do is to ensure that people are held to account. And the most powerful words are perhaps saved for the ending of the book. I've got them here for you. She said, "In my mind, I hold a picture of a girl reaching out for help and easily finding it. I picture a woman too who, having come to terms with her childhood pain, feels that it's within her power to take action against those who hurt her. If this book moves us even an inch closer to a reality like that, if it helps just one person, I will have achieved my goal. So that's what she wants. She wanted accountability. And what's happening now is Prince William, as I say, he's calling the shots, trying to protect his father against the Prince Andrew drama. There is this tsunami of scandal. Prince Andrew continues to, with a startling lack of contrition, and basically Prince William has been far more ruthless in terms of trying to ostracize Prince Andrew. Those are the very uncomfortable scenes. The last time they were seen together was at the Duchess of Kent's funeral, when you might recall that Andrew and Fergie were there. Very uncomfortable, Prince William. You can look at the footage of that. And apparently it was William who instigated banning Andrew from coming to Christmas. Obviously, things have gone far further than that now. The question about the coronation, will he be allowed to come to William's coronation as and when that happens? And the suggestions are, no, he will just be banished completely. And also the king himself, King Charles, is trying to distance himself from all of this. He went to basically up to where they had the terrible murders, you might remember very recently. And he was basically trying to say, look, we've got to focus on the people and get away from the sort of scandals that happen. So it's incredibly uncomfortable for the royal family. They were hoping that with Andrew's announcement on Friday that he's not going to use his titles, that might deflect and people wouldn't consider it a story. But with his more and more revelations coming out all the time, obviously that focus continues.
Well, it's going to keep continuing, isn't it? Because the Epstein file story in the United States they keep calling and calling and calling. Although we've heard today at the House Oversight Committee, James Comer saying that Alex Acosta said there was no connection to Trump, so suddenly the Democrats have gone silent. But Bill Clinton, he's thinking something completely different. I'm going to play you a clip now. This is astonishing, just the language used. We'll come back and we're very close to the end of the interview, but I've got one other question I want to talk about the UK before we go. But let's look at this first, because this is putting this all together for our viewers. Take a look.
And he keeps talking about how he wants to get even and may have to call out the military on our own people. The danger within. I suppose that includes me. And I mean, basically, he's asserted the right to go after anybody that he thinks, in his wisdom, is a threat, right? You sign the oath says you promise to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And he said, I think I'll start with domestic. Bring me the army. Now, I used to like President Clinton. I once said only he and Ronald Reagan were the great presidents since World War II. But I've had a change of heart, and I think he needs to go away for a long time. And I'm not going to execute him, although I could, under the Supreme Court's ruling. But I think I'll just send him to the Colorado Supermax for the rest of his life. So I've already got a petition ready. I want him to transfer me to Guantanamo. Because when you're 78, you're a lot more worried about it being too cold than being too hot. We're laughing about this, but let me tell you something. Being president is a sacred duty.
I watched that thinking that could be AI. It is something I can't believe. But if you're watching that is a guilty man covering his tracks, is it not?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I'm not sure I would go that far. He's certainly playing to the crowd, isn't he, on that sort of basis? But the worrying thing, and this is what's happening around the world about lawfare and using the legal system to go against your enemies, this is the problem. Because if it's generally used on that sort of basis, where there are genuine abuses and cases to look at, then it sort of gets dismissed. But you're right. I go back to my central point that each and every one of these extremely serious, accusations need to be looked at. They need to be gone through forensically, using experts, getting as much evidence as you can to support this, because in a vacuum, speculation is rife, and speculation is incredibly damaging and very, very dangerous. And we're not stupid. And I always say that in terms of the sort of population, in terms of the electorate, we shouldn't be treated as though we were stupid. We deserve to have answers. We deserve to have the truth told. And that's got to be the main sort of focus for all of this.
Well, in the UK, as in here in Australia, we seem to be fighting the same battles. It's a battle of the globalists, the digital IDs, the pandemics that never seem to be answered for, the same compliance rule going over and over again. We were told, as you said earlier, that it's easy just to label people far right, but it always seems to be coming from what is now the far left. Me, as an ex-Labor person, could never be in that party anymore. I never changed. The party did. And I feel like it's another example of projection. So when you have a far left Prime Minister, as you do in Keir Starmer, as we do here in Australia, Anthony Albanese has been is from the left of the Labor Party, then it's a very interesting and difficult case. But at the same time, politics is a bit like a pendulum. It swings and it swings hard, but then when it comes back the other way, things change. In the UK now, Nigel Farage and the Reform Party seem to be making some sort of inroads that there may be an appetite for real change in the Westminster system of government, that perhaps a third party emerges. Because here in Australia, we have a very similar dilemma. We have Labor and the Liberal National Coalition, and we have the third party movement, but we've never seen any real change. But suddenly there's an appetite in this country for the creation of an Australian Reform Party. So my question is that effective in the UK with Nigel Farage and Reform, or is it just another fly-by-night and we're still stuck with the same two-party system?
Well, it's a very interesting question. I think I'm never a fan of labels. I think people believe in certain basic fundamental human rights. They believe in certain policies of education, of health, and so on and so forth, and discussing those issues. Just going down to one particular label, all you're going to do is pander to the same narrative. So I think we should be far more open about that. Reform has undoubtedly, there's been a turquoise tidal wave, if you like, of move. And you look at the latest polls, they have astonishing predictions about the number of seats if an election was held today, what's going to happen. There's a number of, and it's not just the only party in town, however. There's another party called Advance UK, which has recently been formed by Ben Habib, who used to be in Reform. They don't really get on very well, unfortunately, Nigel and Ben anymore. And also Rupert Lowe was famously had his issues with Nigel Farage, and he's got his Restore Britain, which is not a party, but it's it's difficult to say what it is, a movement, I guess. But all of these, what it is, Jason, is we've got to separate. Are people just fed up with the system they're voting for an alternative, so it's a negative vote? Or are they looking at these sort of situations and saying, this is what we believe and this is why we're going to look at it? So it's an interesting time, but it's not finished yet.
Well, that is a really great summary of politics today, and I think it's really important for people watching this in Australia, US, anywhere. Is your vote a positive vote or a negative vote? Are you protesting? Or are you voting for other reasons? Because this is the whole idea of the disappointment and the disillusionment, is that you become an idealist. When you realise that the system is broken, you then only want to focus on the things that are right. It creates idealism, which in itself is a beautiful thing, but in politics, it's a blood sport, and it's still 51% defeats 49% each and every time. And this is the great balance here. And you do wonder that simplification, consolidation, collectivism is what's keeping Labor in Australia in power. But that requires a groupthink, and it's the free will and the independence and the self-sufficiency that's making the alternative more difficult than otherwise, because when you break away from the system, what you're really saying is, I don't want any government. Leave me the hell alone. I don't want anything to do with any of you. I will run my own race. Thank you. And at the same time, we are being dragged in. We are being told what to do, and we're being beaten over the head, more or less, to comply with everything that these far left governments are doing to us around the world in a plot, it seems, to bring us all to this one world government scenario run by an artificial intelligent robot somewhere in Brussels, perhaps, and they won't tell us what's really going on. All these ridiculous organisations, the WEF, the WHO, etc., and the United Nations, and so no wonder people are confused, Andrew. But the only way forward is good conversation, great debate, and the ability to look at things and from different perspectives and a mature attitude. But all that seems gone. But you've provided today a beautiful perspective, analysis, encouragement, and it's the first UK guest I've had on this show, and I think we're at episode 44. It's been a long time coming, so thank you so much for your time today.
44, lucky hard 8 for those who play craps. It's got to be good. Your best episode ever.
Well, it certainly was. Well, thank you very, very much. And it's been a great delight. Andrew Eborn, tell us all where we can find you, because I'm sure after today you will get a whole bunch of people coming across.
Oh, and I'll be delighted. And I love to engage and hear people's opinions and work out to make sure that they have a voice as well. So you can follow me at Andrew Eborn, at Octopus TV. You can also subscribe to the Andrew Eborn Show on YouTube. It's free, everybody's favourite 4-letter. Do press that subscribe button now. And as I say, do stay in touch. I love hearing from people and ensure that your voice is heard.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Andrew. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back to conclude the show. Don't go anywhere. This is the 51st State. And welcome back to the 51st State. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Andrew Eborn. What do you think is going to happen with the royal family? I mean, are they going to pay a price, or are they above the law? And do you get to make an excuse for people in power? This has been the argument with the Democrats over President Trump, and President Trump is a convicted felon according to what is real. But then there's the detail, those that saw what was going on and believed that it was corrupt, the decision and the court case against Trump. So how do you balance it out? Do we worry about it? Do we let it go? Or, as we said earlier, do we just get on with our lives? What do we really want for ourselves? What do you want? And what do you want for this show? What would you like to see, and who would you like me to interview? What type of questions should we really be asking? And should we be able to ask the big questions about big topics? Can we go beyond, or do we have to play a straight bat? It's a difficult thing in independent media, because the job of independent media is to get to the facts, of course, but to push away the narrative protections that prevent stories like Prince Andrew getting out there in real time, but also to be able to bring people across. And that's what I mean by idealism. It's one thing to be a conspiracy theorist and have your little audience of people, But if it never gets anywhere and never permeates the mainstream narrative, what's the real point of it? To be the smartest guy in a prison cell rounded up because you are the purveyor of misinformation? Or is that censorship that's the hill to die on? They're great questions, all of them. And there are no real answers yet, but what it is an encouragement for how we're going to get there. Now, I criticise idealists a lot, certainly in politics, because it doesn't get us anywhere. But I appreciate that I, like you, if you are an idealist, am one as well. What is the point of doing this if we have to compromise on things we don't want to compromise on? Or is this a battle that means that we have to fight on regardless, and eventually one day we get there? When Nelson Mandela went away for 27 years, did he know he'd become president of South Africa? Did he know that he would change that country forever? And today you might say for the worst, but at the time it was a very different time. And when I say for the worst, because of what we're seeing now in South Africa, with people literally being chased out of their home country based on the colour of their skin, people will argue that that's reverse racism or racism, etc. And this is why it becomes difficult. If we were all living in abundance and we all had so much money that we didn't know how to spend it, if we're all the Sultan of Brunei, for example, would we care? Would that solve the problem? And then there's artificial intelligence. Elon Musk saying that today that the universal basic income will be so much that we'll all be wealthy anyway. We won't have to work. You'll choose to work. Really? Can there really be enough to go around in that environment when there isn't today? And why do we trust politicians when there isn't enough to go around based on what their decisions were, and then we go to them to get us out? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Certainly invites discussion, and I hope to see you all on the next show. Thanks for watching.